You believe you are going to die, and in one very specific and limited sense you are right, but in the deeper sense, the sense that physics actually licenses when you follow the mathematics all the way down to where the real answers live, you are wrong in a way that is not consoling in the cheap religious sense, but astonishing in the way that genuine science is astonishing, which is that it reorders what you thought you knew about the most fundamental thing you thought you understood. And to see why, I need you to do something unusual before we go any further, which is to stop thinking about yourself as a body and start thinking about yourself as a pattern, because this is not a metaphor or a poetic gesture. It is the most accurate physical description of what you actually are, which is approximately 7 octillion atoms, that is a 7 followed by 27 zeros, assembled into a configuration of almost incomprehensible specificity and complexity. A particular arrangement of hydrogen and carbon and oxygen and nitrogen and iron and dozens of other elements that is generating, right now, the experience of reading these words and feeling something about them. And the critical question is not what happens to you when you die, but what happens to those atoms. Because those atoms are not yours. They were never yours. You borrowed them from a universe that has been cycling them through an unbroken chain of forms for longer than the mind can genuinely hold. And verdict 1 is this: not a single atom in your body has ever died, not one. Not once, across the entire 13.8 billion years since the Big Bang assembled the first hydrogen nuclei out of the cooling plasma of the early universe. And to feel what that means, you need to trace where your atoms have actually been. Because the hydrogen in your body, in your water and your cells, and the acid in your stomach, that hydrogen was forged in the first seconds after the Big Bang, which means the most ancient material in you is almost as old as time itself, and the carbon in your neurons, the carbon doing the actual work of making you capable of thought, was synthesized inside the nuclear furnace of a star that lived and burned and exhausted its fuel and collapsed and exploded in a supernova before our sun existed, scattering its substance across the interstellar medium, where it drifted for millions of years before the gravitational collapse that formed our solar system swept it up, and eventually, through the long, patient process of planetary formation and chemical evolution and biological elaboration, assembled it into the particular pattern that became you. And the iron in your blood, the iron carrying oxygen to your brain at this moment, came from a stellar explosion so violent it briefly outshone an entire galaxy, a supernova that seeded the interstellar neighborhood with the heavy elements that rocky planets and living things require. And knowing this is not the same as feeling it, so let me try to make you feel it. Those atoms were inside stars. They were part of stellar cores burning at millions of degrees. They were scattered across light years of interstellar space. They were incorporated into the early Earth. They cycled through the first oceans. They passed through bacteria and through every lineage of life that eventually produced the mammals that produced the primates, that produced the hominids that produced you. And not one of them was ever destroyed. Not one of them ever stopped existing. And when you die, they will not stop existing then either, which means that what you call your death is not the end of the things that make you, but the dissolution of the particular arrangement those things currently occupy. And verdict 2 is about what that dissolution actually looks like when you follow it honestly rather than looking away. Because the physical reality of what happens to a body after death is something most people prefer not to examine. But examined carefully, it reveals something extraordinary rather than merely grim. Because within hours of the heart stopping the cells that were kept in careful order by the continuous expenditure of energy, begin to release the enzymes they contained, and those enzymes begin breaking down the structures that house them. A process called autolysis, self-digestion, the body beginning to dismantle itself with the same molecular machinery it used to build itself, and within days the microorganisms that lived in peaceful coexistence with you during life, the trillions of bacteria that inhabited your gut and your skin, begin to spread through tissues that no longer have immune defenses. And they do what microorganisms have been doing since the first living things appeared on this planet 3.8 billion years ago, which is to break complex molecules into simpler ones, to release the energy and the elements locked inside the intricate structures of proteins and fats and nucleic acids, returning them to the forms that other living things can use. And the carbon in your bones becomes carbon dioxide that plants absorb through photosynthesis, and the nitrogen in your proteins becomes nitrates that fertilize the soil, and the phosphorus and sulfur and trace elements cycle back into the ground and the water and the air, and the whole magnificent chemistry of your body, assembled over decades with extraordinary biological precision, is redistributed into the living world around you with an efficiency that no human engineer has ever matched, because the universe wastes nothing, not a single atom, not a single unit of energy. Everything that was you becomes part of everything else. And Sagan knew this and found it not depressing, but clarifying, because the alternative, the fantasy of permanent individual preservation, requires a universe that makes an exception for us, and the universe makes no exceptions. It simply converts, perpetually and completely. And verdict 3 is the one that reframes death not as the enemy of life, but as its most essential mechanism. Because here is the thing that the biology of this planet has been demonstrating for 3.8 billion years. Without death, there is no evolution. Without dissolution, there is no renewal. Without the dismantling of old patterns, there is no raw material for new ones. And to see this clearly, you only need to look at a fallen tree in a forest. Because when a large tree collapses and dies, it does not disappear. It becomes a nurse log, a substrate of decaying wood that opens into habitat for mosses and fungi and insects, and the seedlings of new trees that root in its softening surface. And over decades, that single dead tree becomes dozens of living ones, becomes thousands of organisms, becomes the soil itself, becomes the forest, and what looked like an ending was actually the most generative event in that small patch of woodland, the moment when resources locked inside one form were liberated to become many forms. And the same logic operates at every scale in the universe. Because when a star exhausts its hydrogen and collapses and explodes, it seeds the surrounding space with the heavy elements that rocky planets require, the carbon and oxygen and silicon and iron, without which chemistry complex enough to support life is impossible. And every atom of carbon in every living thing on Earth was produced inside a star that died, which means your existence was paid for by stellar death. And the existence of whatever comes after you will be paid for in part by your dissolution. And death is not the interruption of life's project, but the mechanism by which life's project continues.
The engine that converts what was into what will be. And without it, the first organisms to appear on this planet would have consumed every available resource, and the story would have ended in stagnation before complexity had a chance to emerge. And verdict 4 is the one that physics offers when you push the question of consciousness all the way to its most difficult edge. Because the atoms we can follow, their trajectory through stars and soil and organisms and back into the cosmos is clear and measurable, and in a deep sense reassuring. But what about the experience itself? What about the particular quality of being you? the subjective feeling of existing in this body, reading these words in this moment. What happens to that when the pattern dissolves? And here the honest answer is that we do not fully know, because consciousness remains the hardest problem in science, the place where our understanding of the physical world meets something it cannot yet fully account for. But there is a framework from physics itself that offers a genuinely strange kind of comfort, which is the block universe interpretation of relativity, the view that space-time is a four-dimensional structure in which all moments exist simultaneously, in which the past is not gone but simply located at different coordinates, in which every moment that has ever been experienced is, in a precise mathematical sense, permanently encoded in the geometry of reality. And if this is correct, then the moment you are in right now, this specific configuration of atoms generating this specific experience, is not moving toward destruction, but is a permanent feature of the universe's structure, as fixed and as real as a coordinate on a map. And the moments of your childhood, the moments of love and grief and wonder and boredom and all the ordinary, extraordinary texture of a human life, those moments are not erased by time. They are located in time. They exist at their coordinates the way a mountain exists at its coordinates. And in this sense, every conscious moment you have ever had will always have happened, cannot be unmade, is written into the structure of reality as permanently as the speed of light or the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter. And Sagan felt this too, that the universe keeps accounts, that nothing that has genuinely occurred is ever truly lost, that the past is not an absence but a location. And verdict 5 is the deepest one, the one that asks not what happens to your atoms or your moments, but what consciousness itself actually is, and whether it ends when you do. And here the most honest thing I can say is that we do not know. We genuinely do not know. The hard problem of consciousness, the question of why and how physical processes give rise to subjective experience, remains unsolved. But there is a possibility worth sitting with, which is that consciousness is not something the brain produces the way a factory produces a product, but something the universe does when matter becomes organized in certain ways, a fundamental feature of reality that emerges wherever information is integrated at sufficient complexity. And if this is even partially right, then when your particular pattern dissolves, the intense, focused consciousness it generated diffuses rather
than disappears, becomes less concentrated, less organized, less individuated, spreads back into the broader substrate from which it emerged. And the universe, which spent 13.8 billion years organizing matter into forms capable of experiencing themselves, does not lose the capacity for experience when any particular form dissolves. It simply redistributes it. And this is what Sagan meant when he said that we are a way for the universe to know itself. Because what is extraordinary is not just that the universe contains matter and energy, but that it contains matter and energy organized into patterns capable of awareness, capable of curiosity, capable of looking outward at the stars and inward at the atom and understanding both. And you are one of those patterns, assembled from the ashes of dead stars by billions of years of physical and chemical and biological elaboration, temporarily organized into something that can feel the weight of its own existence. And when that organization relaxes, when the pattern you currently are dissolves back into the atoms and the energy and the information that constitute it, the universe does not lose what it had. It transforms it, as it has transformed everything for 14 billion years. And the atoms that were you will be incorporated into other patterns, some of them living, some of them not. And some of those living patterns will also eventually be capable of awareness, of wonder, of looking up at a night sky on this pale blue dot, this mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam, and feeling the particular astonishment of being a temporary arrangement of ancient matter that somehow became conscious enough to know it is temporary. And that astonishment, that capacity for wonder, is the universe's most extraordinary achievement, more extraordinary than galaxies or supernova or the large-scale structure of space-time, because it is the universe becoming aware of its own magnificence, and you are that awareness, for now, in this form, and when this form ends, the awareness does not. It continues in other forms, asking other questions, feeling other astonishments, tracing the same atoms through their next configurations on the way to whatever the universe becomes next. And you were always going to be part of that continuity, not as a body or a name or a memory, but as matter, as energy, as the permanent fact that for this brief window of cosmic time, the universe organized itself into you. And that fact, like every fact, is written into the structure of reality forever, and cannot be taken back, and is enough, and is more than enough, and is everything. Keep looking up. If this video changed the way you think about death, matter, and what it means to exist inside a universe that never wastes anything, subscribe now and turn on notifications, because the next exploration goes even deeper. And tell us in the comments. What do you think is the most profound thing physics tells us about what we actually are?